And then we can do the minutes.
Yes, good idea. I just recorded.
Yeah, because we can do the minutes off of that if somebody's not here.
Perfect. We also are recording the transcript. So the whole like closed caption for this meeting should be recorded as well. So that will make taking the minutes a lot easier.
Perfect.
Okay.
That's how Terry used to do. She would just like watch the YouTube afterwards. Like she'd try to do her best to keep up.
I would listen to the tapes at the ZBA. So I mean, anytime it's recorded, that's the easy way to do it. And then you don't have to be that great. It can be just who was here, who spoke, what was the vote, and that's it.
Should we just review the vote for now that it's recorded?
No, I could take minutes from that. Because then I'll get them to Peter.
Yeah, you're still the minute person.
Fancy.
Okay, where are we next? Planning boundary, Kim, you want to go over that? We have the maps here in our handout.
Okay, great. I'll bring up the maps over here. So as you guys probably, most of you remember, we on the last meeting talked about the planning boundary, and the planning boundary is something that we need to get figured out before we file the notice to proceed. And so we had a conversation about the planning area, thinking maybe we would keep it somewhat similar. But then there was a conversation about maybe wanting to look at what the flood zones were, and also take a look at the historic overlay. And so I went and made a bunch of maps, which I will share here. Okay. All right. So first, looking at Mattakit. You can see, so here is the original planning boundary for Mattakit, and putting the flood hazard zones over, you can see, so the bright pink is the 0.2% annual chance of flood hazard. So that's basically the 1 in, I think, 500 flood zone, 500-year flood zone. So that would basically flood once every 500 years, they're saying. The AE is the 1 in 100 flood zone. So I think it's called the 100-year flood zone. And that's what's in orange. And then the VE and the X, those are areas to not flood very often at all. Those are found back out here. And then the Harbor Overlay District, you can see as this purple area in here. So looking at Mattakit, we thought that the line for the planning boundary pretty much kept all of this AE area in pretty well. We didn't see a huge need. I'll just go through all the maps and then we can discuss. We didn't think there was a huge need to change the boundary for Mattakit, but definitely open for discussion and want to talk to you guys about that. So this one is Mattakit.
Stay there for a second, Kim.
Sure.
There's no velocity zone or an A zone here in the harbor?
No.
It's just the AE zone?
Yeah, just the AE zone.
I'm very surprised about that. FEMA didn't grab that.
Something also to mention is this is a layer that's from 2014. This is the most recent layer that FEMA has. I spoke with Nathan, who does GIS for the town, you guys probably know, and he said that they often update this once every 10 years. So he'd think hopefully in the next year they would be getting a new layer. But it is a bit old.
That is old, because I thought FEMA had done
had
done Brant Point more recently than that too.
No, 2014 is when we done.
Really, it's been that long?
Yeah.
But isn't velocity zone? I mean, that's a thing for.
That's Washington Street.
I mean, all this is nice, but I think velocity zone is one of the key things.
Yeah, the A zones and the velocity zone.
I think
The pink is the velocity zone.
the
The VE is velocity.
Oh, the VE?
Yep.
So then that would be this zone in here.
Right.
I think in town that's more critical than in Mattakit, because
You get the harbor.
and you don't get the flooding here.
Well, ask Miss Point about that.
Well, that's a
It
different
comes
story
and it
from the south.
goes. Yeah. Wow, okay. Anybody have any questions on this one? Okey-dokey.
Okay, and then we just have some.
Hold on, Dave has a
Yes,
question.
sure.
I did the last FEMA flood maps in 2014 with them, and are you saying that there's some requirement, or is it a new requirement that they do them every 10 years?
That's what Nathan said. I don't know if it's a requirement, but Nathan said that they tend to update them every 10 years. He said he hadn't heard anything about when a new update was going to be coming out, but that was what he had thought. There's also some other models out there. Kristen has a link to an MCFRM, I think, model, and we can share that with you guys. That you can't download into GIS layers, but there is another model that shows flooding, which we can look at if you would like to.
No, I'm just surprised because I think it was far more than 10 years. Well, I know for a fact it was far more than 10 years prior to 2014
Yeah.
that they were done.
They hadn't changed
Okay.
it in years.
That's why I was surprised that somebody said that they would be done in 10 years.
Right.
Just for that, we're 92 and 96.
Yeah, because I have the old flood map from 92.
Yeah, so I it's just a question. I was just surprised to hear that they would do them again. 2 years.
Right. I don't think Nathan was positive on that. He thought that it might happen that way.
All right, thank you.
So I don't know if it's something we necessarily should wait for, because we don't have any idea if that's going to be updated anytime soon.
Kim, are we gonna discuss each slide as it comes, or do you want to go through them all? and then go-
Why don't I go through them all and then we can come back?
I think those were just general questions.
Gotcha.
And
Yep.
we're okay now at the moment.
Okay, great. So here is one zoomed in map of Mattakit. And here is the lower area of Mattakit, again, with the Harbor Overlay District up here. And you can see some more of the flood zones all in here.
Wow.
And then this is the zoomed out version that includes the islands. And then with Nantucket Harbor, so this is zoomed in on Nantucket Harbor. And you can see here that this is the original planning boundary here. And you can see a lot of the AE zone, or the 100-year flood zone, extends out to here. So one idea that we had was possibly extending this boundary out to here, which I'll show you an example of that, if that's something people thought would be useful. And then here you can see more of the harbor area zoomed out a little bit more, with Milestone Road coming this way. And then here, moving a little bit more towards the east of that last map, you can see Milestone Road here, and then I'm sorry, Pulpus Road here, and then you can see the harbor, the original harbor boundary.
Freaks.
And here you can see some more moving more towards the east and more towards the east. And then here you can see the zoomed out version. So again, the red is the original harbor boundary.
Hey, Kim, I think this is not the original. I think this is the version where we included more of Brant Point per discussion.
Oh yes, I'm sorry, you're right. You're right. So it's mostly the same as the original, but we did include a small bit here that was bumped out a little bit to include more of Brant Point. So that's that. And just as an example of what we were thinking as a new boundary, if we wanted to. Here you can see in the green could be the new boundary, which includes basically most of what was in the old draft planning boundary, but comes out a little bit more in here, which basically covers where the flood zone comes out with that AE zone. So
Is that following pretty much the Harbor Overlay District?
So the Harbor Overlay District is more, it's small, a smaller area that I think is in this area in here. I think, can you see my mouse?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I have my head down though.
Yeah, the Harbor Overlay District is, it's right in here. So it does include the whole harbor overlay district.
Those are the water dependent uses, things like that.
And here you can see just a zoomed in map where old boundary, which actually Kristen's right that this isn't exactly the old boundary. I believe it comes closer into here, but we bumped it out a little bit. And then this here would be the potential new boundary if we wanted to, that hugs that AE zone.
This will be the cliff.
Going down here.
Why wouldn't we include Cliffside?
Well,
Is that extruded?
Yeah, go back up to the top of that map for a second. I see you've got Jetty's Beach, but you don't appear to have Cliffside Beach Club, which is that pink area to the right of the green, right there.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
That should be included no matter what we're doing here.
well, it's not really in the harbor.
No, it's not in the harbor, but I'm just going back and forth between flood prone to harbor to flood prone to harbor. I'm just, yeah, I got it, but I'm just looking at the maps.
What's that little bump in the, see that little bump in the line, like,
In the
The
middle
green one?
there,
yeah, like
that's
in the green line right there.
yeah, that's probably the cliff. That's probably coming down Lincoln Circle,
Oh, right.
cobblestones.
Right
Yeah,
there.
it's just an area
Yeah.
outside of them.
Yeah,
That's in the cobblestones. I think going up the hill, I can't tell. No, that's further down.
No, that's,
Yeah, that's.
No,
that's
that's,
back like the,
oh, Coffin Park. That's along
that's
Cliff
like the
Road.
subdivision that used to be the tennis club. There's a little extension of the flood zone or the non-flood zone. that
Yeah.
comes off that bank. There's a little projection that's above elevation 8 there.
Yeah, that's the backside of that old tennis court. Before you get to Stone Barn. Or it's at Stone Barn. It's that, that's area.
Yeah, so
Because the bird
This is-
sanctuary is down there.
Stone Barn is, so here's like Brant Point Road.
Yeah,
This is the hotel.
Mhm.
This is where the old tennis club used to be.
yeah.
This is that next little grouping over, and then this is Cobblestone Hill. coming
Yeah.
up here. So that's the Stone Barn there.
Okay.
I for one kind of like the new draft plan.
Well, it includes all the,
The current.
I know, and as it relates and ties into. The whole coastal management plan, sea level rise and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's just,
right.
I think it's a good place.
Are we tracking what coastal resiliency is coming up with?
Well, that's what Peter's their rep, so.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
want to make sure that there's
Yeah.
there's not a
Yeah.
disconnect.
Right,
between the
almost
two.
definitely, and I think Peter will keep that connected.
Yeah, we definitely can run this by Peter and make sure he thinks that's a good idea.
Yeah, take a look at their coastal resiliency
It-
boundaries.
Well, I know they hug that flood zone pretty close, and then
Yeah.
one of the things they look at is. They do a lot looking at that MCFRM, and then they also look at. Obviously things like sea level rise in there, but then you're talking about. Scenarios and what you're looking at, and that's a very. Loosey-goosey line, and we're trying to pick which one is preferred and which one's not. I think in my mind, the flood zone makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Can I ask a basic question?
Yep.
What impact deciding on where these green or red lines go will affect our future work?
Do you want to take that, Kim?
Sure. So I guess in terms of future work, then we would just basically be looking into if any different uses or activities are happening in these areas that then we need to start thinking about and considering moving forward. Any potential impacts that could be, in terms of the planning area, generally we look at impacts that could happen even outside of the planning area, but just look a little bit more closely into these areas and see if there are items that we really need to be focusing on.
Couldn't it be? I wonder if it could be beneficial, in the future for, water dependent uses and more insurances of those types of activities being allowed there, say somebody wanted to have a marine business or some type of I think it just gives you a little bit bigger area to allow certain activities in and maybe prohibit some activities in, but it's not an area that's completely unmanageable because it's so big.
Are you talking about
If that makes any sense.
expanding the blue part of this? Those are the water dependent uses areas.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, I think that the 2009 plan, I think we did a good job in protecting a lot of those things. This just gives us just a little bigger area in case something could possibly happen in that. Again, to improve, maintain, establish water dependent uses or green uses or activity that could rely on the harbor.
Could this be at all controversial? In other words, as us making these boundaries, or are there going to be people in the community saying, wait a second, this is really hurting me? This is affecting my insurance, or, I mean, is this, in other words, can we expect that if we change the boundaries that we're going to get some blowback from some people, or is this a neutral thing?
Well, from a FEMA flood AE velocity zone perspective, there were only, I want to say, 250 properties that were additionally affected by the new FEMA flood maps. And if there was going to be impacts like you're talking about with insurance and controversy and stuff, I would have thought and did think at the time that would have had a bigger area for pushback. And then we held a bunch of public meetings and found out that, Nantucket had done a pretty good job as far as insurances down at Grand Point. After the No Name storm, a lot of people raised their houses and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, there were really probably only 60 or 70 people who really had some major impact.
Well, I guess the point is that FEMA is really the one that
yeah,
that's what you have to work with, I think. FEMA,
right. I don't.
We're maybe are not a.
I don't think that. Just my opinion. I don't think that the harbor boundary would have any effect on anybody's property stuff. It would be FEMA and the insurance companies and stuff like that. I mean, I don't think this would have. I think this is more of an opportunity to allow or disallow what this group wants to see happen in activities in Nantucket.
I think to answer your question on another vein, I had a client down on Easton Street who happens to be in the blue zone, happens to be a dwelling
in the Roth
Jones's house.
Yeah.
And we got into a battle over how it was going to be lifted. Piers has to have a water dependent use. We had to go to the state. It's a dwelling. It's always been a dwelling. It's never been a commercial structure. And we had to put kayaks, the DEP wanted kayaks under the house, under the pier. We got into this battle between the Concom. I had to obviously step off that. Between the Concom, FEMA regulations, the DEP, the water dependent use. So I'm leery about expanding that zone about the harbor overlay, where it comes down to you have to have a water dependent use on the first floor by a local entity by creating that here. So that's the thing I'm most confused about, is that water dependent use versus an existing dwelling versus lifting it versus having to put kayaks underneath it versus this versus that. Mm-hmm. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around that thing, that part of it.
I think if it helps, Linda, is I think when we're talking about the harbor overlay district
versus the plan
versus the planning area,
yeah.
I think that overlay district would obviously have to go back. If that was going to require a revision, would have to go through the normal process to revise the zoning map. That's a zoning provision.
Yeah.
I think what we're looking at here as far as the green and red lines is just a this is the area that the harbor plan covers. Not what we're recommending for changes, what we're recommending to do. This is
Yeah.
just we're looking at these lines and I guess if I can take a second to kind of advocate for the flood zone line. I think what we're seeing at Coastal Resiliency is trying to create some level of consistency and expectation for these areas that may get managed in kind of blocks in larger groups, right? So the Brant Point neighborhood for Wall Street and Willard Street, Holbert Ave, Beach Street.
James, Henry, all the rest. of them.
Obviously, those, they're all impacted by the coastal flooding from the harbor pretty heavily. And whatever strategies we try to do through Coastal Resiliency is going to affect that whole area. And I think identifying those areas together in the harbor plan as we're planning for other uses or other activities can provide some additional consistencies for those areas.
What also was an issue for me, I was on the original plan group that created the harbor plan. They had a separate group then did the implementation, the actual bylaws and all that stuff. And I found that from my perspective, having been on the harbor plan development, there was a disconnect between the harbor plan and the implementation group as to what our goals were. So the implementation group, to me, went a little farther than what we had planned for the harbor plan. So is there going to be, if we recommend things to change in the harbor plan, is there going to be another implementation group to change the bylaw after that?
I think so.
I think
so, but there's got to be a lot more communication between us and whatever that group is, or we have to go into that group.
Well, I think that you're right. In some manner, I think you're right. I think what one good thing that the harbor plan did was that it did make a lot of recommendations with matrices and who was responsible for doing what to who. And other plans have followed that, and it seems to be a good model. But I think there needs to be more emphasis and interaction with the people that do the plan and the implementation group, so nothing gets lost.
Yeah.
But I think the only way, well, two things. One, I strongly believe that you have to make those recommendations and have them prioritized.
Yeah.
And then the implementation group kind of goes out, does the bylaw rewrites, does the, whatever mechanical stuff that has to happen, and also looks for funding to if there's funding required to do these things. But I really believe that's a good model, and we should continue to follow that.
We just need to have better communication.
Otherwise, the damn plan just sits on the shelf, and that to me is just frustrating for everybody.
Well, I'll say, like with the shellfish management plan, we spent, good amount of time developing that too, and could not get anyone to implement it. We tried to do an implementation committee twice and we couldn't get anyone to sign up. So our department ended up taking on all the implementation for that, which turned out fine. But I think there's the opportunity for burnout from one committee to the next. And then it's hard to get other people to come in to implement.
We just have to be aware that is where this is going to go.
And I think
we need to stay in contact with where it's going to go.
Yeah.
I think one good way to start that too is I don't think it hurts to hold off on disbanding the harbor plan update committee until maybe you even have a joint meeting between that committee and the implementation committee to kind of talk everything through, right? And you could still interact through there. I think difference between the 2009 plan and now as well is the staff involved with the plans now is it's different. There's just a lot more people involved and a lot more people to help with specific projects before where, in that 2009 plan, just the number of people at the town level was just smaller.
Right.
And you're divided into a million different directions where now there's, 8 full-time people in natural resources, and the harbor master's office has a handful of folks, and planning has a lot more folks. That if there's specific projects to people, there are staff people on the town that can help provide some of that continuity from spot to spot that just weren't there before to put the attention necessary at it, because there's only so much everyone.
Were you on both, Dave?
Yeah, but
Because I was appalled really at the other people that were on there with you, the implementation group, because we spent a lot of time with this.
Right.
And all of a sudden I'm watching what's going on in the implementation group and you're by yourself over there basically. And the other people had no clue our discussions, how we got there, had no clue what they were doing with zoning. They were sort of running amok, and a couple of them were running amok. And I was like really concerned that we not have that happen again, but I'm much more positive about the fact we have staff.
What I think is great is here we are at the second meeting and we're already talking about it.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
wanted to bring that up.
we had a year and a half's worth of meetings, and yeah, it was kind of in the back of everybody's mind of yeah, there's gonna be, you know, we're hoping that there's gonna be an implementation group, but here we are already talking about it, so I think it would, this one would be even better. I mean, I will say the one we did in 1993, yeah, this is my third one. We didn't do that because, to Jeff's point, the staff and the resources was even smaller in 1993. You know, and we had a few things on the burner that got done right away, but then a lot of the follow-up didn't get done because it was just outside the ability of the small group of people that we have. So I think we're headed in the right direction.
I would just say.
Hang on a second up there, Phil.
Oh, sorry. Oh, just to jump in from the phone, I think also Steve had his hand up if Steve wanted to jump in.
Oh, sure.
Steve, then I'll go to Phil.
Yeah, it was just to address a comment that was kind of way back now, but regarding the Chapter 91 licensing, the water dependent, the non-water dependent requirements, and changing, you know, the harbor boundary won't really affect that at all. That's, you know, it's anything within Chapter 91 is either on tidelands or fill tidelands. So what you're talking about here, I just don't think it'd, in fact, it may give you a little bit more control over those properties. So just a comment.
Thanks, Phil.
This is just getting way ahead of things, but you know, at some point when we talk about the implementation, actually with so many people and so many committees and whatever, that would actually add to nothing getting done if there's no quarterback.
Yeah. Quarterback.
Sadly, what we get to do now. So
all right. So well, it sounds as though we want Peter Brace to take a look at this, since he's also on the Coastal Resiliency Committee, and make sure that he would be okay with this change and that it would be in line with what was happening in that plan. Is that correct?
Sounds like it. Everybody in agreement?
Yes.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Might as well do it now rather than get all the way through this and then do it.
I think it makes sense to follow the FEMA boundary. Seth's hand is raised. I think is he on crack as well?
Seth?
Hi, everybody. Apologies for the difficult joining from the ferry and now from a car. Getting back just towards the Mattakit boundary, I do have one question, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
In terms of the boundary, I think it's fine. Although I do see that, you know, there's sort of a arbitrary cutoff around Mattakit Ditch, and given all of the implementation strategies in the Coastal Resiliency Plan, there's going to be significant changes to those areas, possibly within this 10-year time period that we're planning for. So I don't know if we necessarily need to extend the boundary to include like all of Long Pond in this in this round, but we should definitely be considering the impacts, because Long Pond, the north head of Long Pond, that's all going to become a part of the Mattakit Harbor relatively soon. or we're going to be pushing water into it from Mattakit Harbor through the Mattakit Ditch relatively soon. So I do think we need to consider the impacts of that, even if it's not within the boundary itself.
That's an interesting concept. I was more concerned about the fact that so little of Eel Point is included, because the harbor coming into the harbor, we have to come across that area. you can't come straight into the Mattocket Harbor. You gotta go, there's all kinds of wacky ways to get in there when you follow the buoys. And I'm just sort of, I'm not sure that line at Mattocket, at Eel Point is adequate. That was my problem with it. That's my really own problem with it. I think the ditch idea is really something we have to talk about. But I think Eel Point should be more included in the harbor.
Was that original boundary along Eel Point likely due to topography, or how was that drawn?
To be honest, I'm trying to think back, and
there was more of it back then.
I could not explain to you why, and maybe Kristen can, but I could not explain to you why that boundary is where it is there. I can explain to you that the only discussion I remember was that we had to make sure that Mattocket Boatyard was included because that was the only commercial entity out there and we wanted to protect it and forever. So I can't tell you why that line is where it is, but maybe Kristen can. I don't, or Jack's a good one for remembering things like that, but I personally just don't remember the discussion around that boundary.
I'll just go back to it again. You can't come straight into that harbor. You got to come around and follow the buoys, because I've had to pull our boat across the shallows many times going to Tuckernuck.
Yeah.
And I just know that it's all part of the entrance to the harbor. So I would think that you would include move that line north on Eel Point. You see what the channel is.
Is that because Linda, you think it's all going to be underwater within the next 10 years?
Oh, you betcha. It's half the size it was when I was a kid.
Well, I know it's smaller than it was, but.
And it floods, and you got pockets of water in there coming in from the harbor and from the channel coming in. So I would just rather see that line move north.
So it looks like I can draw on here. So I will try. So meaning, would you think more meaning coming like up around here and including all of this?
I don't know about the north side, except that water intrusion does come through there and you get pockets of water in the middle of Eel Point. If it's really bad. I would just, at least the lower left going up, that right there going up.
Like right here.
Going up towards the channel. Yeah, right about there.
And then maybe coming back in here.
Yeah, I would, because I think it's going to become part of the harbor proper here shortly.
Yeah, to answer Dave's question, I think the original boundary may have been drawn based on parcel lines.
Yeah, that makes sense.
On what, Kristen?
Parcel lines.
Half out. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I have to look at the parcel lines from a zoning perspective.
Okay.
But we don't have to do that. I mean, I think the discussion about extending the existing boundary out in Nantucket Harbor by Brown Point results in cutting properties in half. So I don't think we need to be bound by parcel lines.
No, and there's no structures allowed out there, period, beyond the entrance. So it's fine if you include it all, because there isn't any deal with the zoning on that one.
Yep. All right. Well, I think a next step, it sounds like, would be for me to go back and make some new boundaries and then recirculate to the group. And is it possible to get a confirmation of the boundaries via email, or do we want to wait until the next meeting? I don't, in terms of like submitting the notice to proceed and all, I don't want to delay us.
I don't want to get into a situation where it becomes a rolling meeting. I know Jesse has a question also. Seth.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Seth if he had a thought on where he would draw, to his point, where he would draw the line, since we have the marker out down by the Mattocket ditch.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may, to Jesse, I mean, I'm not exactly sure, and it might help to ask Peter in terms of crack or confer with Natural Resources Department staff as well. But if you look where the map is right now, it's just half of Mattocket ditch. So we could extend it in that whole AE zone there where it's yellow to the end of Matticat Ditch at Second Bridge where it meets up with Matticat Road, the culvert under Matticat Road. And we could just keep that part. Then we could not worry about Long Pond for now, because if you take any part of Long Pond, you're going to have to take all of Long Pond. But why don't we just take the whole part of Matticat Ditch for now?
Okay. Do you know where that is so you can do it, or do you need him to send you a mock-up?
A markup would be great if possible.
I
Is that all right, Seth?
I can send it, yeah. But I mean, you can see it on the map, that big horizontal line that hooks up to the road and Long Pond, that's the ditch, but I can send the map if you want later.
Jeff says he knows where it is.
Or I wonder, Seth, just to kind of float this idea out by you here, I wonder if we just hug that flood zone, the yellow part, until we get to Matticat Road.
Yeah, that's what
down Matticat Road and then back on the flood zone there. And
that's what I'm advocating for doing. Yes.
Okay.
Because then we pick up that flood zone portion. It's all marsh, so I don't really think it would impact but a couple properties.
Yeah.
But I think that would get to what you're trying to accomplish. I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
And then how often do these plans get updated?
Every 10 years.
Well, if there's a reason to do it sooner because we've got some issues, I suppose we could always, it has to be reconstituted.
Yeah, and you could, I think Steve McKenna said last time, and Jack, Kristen, or Kim could probably confirm this or deny this. I believe if there was something substantial in there, that you could apply a specific amendment to coastal zone management for them to review.
Yeah.
I thought Steve said that last time at least.
Yeah, there is a way to amend the plan without having to reopen the whole process.
Well, doesn't coastal zone management at the state have to sign off on our plans?
Yeah.
They do.
Have to do that. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
You got any questions? Okay, we don't seem to have any more questions here. Seth or Steve, you got any questions up there anymore?
No, I'm good right now. Thank you.
Okay. Old and potentially new planning boundary. I think we just sort of covered that, right?
Yes.
All right, notice to proceed, Kristen.
There isn't much to update you all on. We are waiting for the planning boundary area before we can submit anything. And so most of the rest of the request for notice to proceed has been drafted. I will share a copy with Jeff and Tara as a start, and also with Steve McKenna. And maybe I'll do that before the planning boundary is developed so that we can just move quickly once that is developed. And then
I know we wanted to do that quickly, so we can keep going.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't necessarily delay anything that we would be doing in committee, but I know with other plans that we've developed, the state would prefer that any public meeting happen after the 30-day comment period once the request for notice to proceed is filed. So that's really the thing that gets delayed while we wait to submit that. But otherwise, we can continue to meet and make progress. It also, once that gets approved, you start your 2-year planning clock. So that's the other thing to keep in mind in terms of timelines. But otherwise, it doesn't necessarily change much apart from the public engagement piece.
What do you see, just out of morbid curiosity, what do you see as the longevity of this committee? How long do you think it's going to take us to get where we need to be on an average?
I mean, I think it will take the full 2 years, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
Your indentured servitude.
It's one of those things that when you tack on the 30-day comment period in the beginning, and then there's also a review period at the end. So you're automatically building in 2 months there. And then depending on how much public engagement you want, how well we do the public engagement to avoid any changes at the end of the process that would delay anything, that all gets factored in. So I'd say, optimistically it's 1.5 years, but realistically it's probably the full 2 years.
I think it was 1.5 years for us in 2006. I'm not mistaken. Okay.
But to put it in perspective, I started with UHI in 2005, and I think one of my first meetings was with the Nantucket plan, which was approved in 2009. So we'll break that record, I think. But
I hope so.
you know, we'll shoot for 2 years.
All right, so meeting schedule.
I think we just made Dave's hair go green.
All right. Yeah, so we wanted to come up with a schedule specifically for these harbor committee meetings. If, you know, originally we had talked about doing monthly meetings, some people had mentioned the desire for more meetings, and wanted to check back in with all of you on if we wanted to stick with monthly meetings. If we're doing meetings every 2 weeks, obviously you require more of your time, but we might have more pressing items to talk about where we could, you know, do that. So wanted to open the floor for that first.
How does everybody feel about that?
Well, initially, maybe we should meet again in 2 weeks to try and get this boundary ironed out for the intent, because that seems to be a time pressing issue immediately.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Do we want to just go for that and then figure where we are from there?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is 2 weeks from today?
2 weeks out. Yeah. So between now and then I'll go back in, rework the boundary and circulate some more maps to everyone.
2 weeks from today is the 21st.
That's my birthday.
That'd be our gift
birthday.
to you.
Yeah.
Get to hang out.
Now, my only problem with Tuesdays is that I have CPC before that, and then I have HTC at 4. So
Peter and I have Shab at 5.
And I have
8
Rosen
hours.
right away at 4. That's all in this building.
Right.
Yeah. Got the
about
HTC over there.
Wednesday 2nd.
I mean, Wednesdays are better for me. Thursdays, I got ZBA and all kinds of crap, but Wednesdays are good. Mondays are usually good.
Could Wednesday afternoons work?
The 22nd is my birthday, so we're taking somebody's birthday either way.
It's early enough in the day. You can't start drinking then.
That's okay. Yeah, no, I'm just messing around. It would be fine.
Does Wednesdays work better for everybody? As it just for now?
Yeah.
Then we figure out where we are from there.
Yeah.
All right, so Wednesday, the 22nd. Does 2 o'clock work for everybody?
I will be in Australia, so I might send an email because I think that'll still be pretty early.
You can get, my daughter lives in Australia and she's 15 hours ahead.
If
You
it's
can
2,
do
it would be 5:30.
Yeah.
That's not that bad.
Where are you going there?
Adelaide.
That's my daughter lives, so I'm gonna hook you up with Erin,
My mom's from Adelaide. I've got all my aunts.
because my daughter has been here 23
Oh
years.
my God, really?
Yeah, my 2 grandkids are down there.
I bring up something that was brought up at the, well, are we done with this?
For now, it's the 22nd, Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Okay,
That works.
you have to check the space, don't Jeff? There's 2 rooms here, so.
We will find somewhere to accommodate a hybrid. meeting.
So for that meeting, we will have a new set of boundaries.
Yep.
That hopefully we will be in a position to approve.
Yeah, and Jeff, if
Yep.
you want to adjust the boundaries between now and then, go ahead.
All right, I'll work with Kim to resolve these comments. And
Yeah.
we'll get a.
Yeah, 'cause
solid
you gotta
draft
look at
in
harbor,
advance.
you gotta look at the harbor, you gotta look at around the creeks, you gotta look at around the actual harbor, Grand Point, obviously Eel Point. I think those are the 2 that are the most in question.
So what other committees in the town should we talk to about our boundaries? Is there any, I'm just trying to think there needs to be some element of consistency if we are intersecting with anybody else.
It doesn't really affect the zoning. The only zoning crossover I see is the ones that are along North Beach Street. Because as you know, the wetlands run right up to the bottom of the guys on Cliff Road. And most of the guys on Cliff Road own all the way down and all the way over. We'd be bifurcating, but I don't think it makes any difference because most of it's wetlands anyway down there. So I don't think it's gonna matter that we run this line down the middle of
Yeah,
whatever.
we may
they
not
have.
have any zoning recommendations for those
Yeah.
lots anyways.
So I don't think it's gonna affect zoning
I think,
or planning.
I think crack is really the
Mhm.
big group that we should make sure that they're
Unfortunately.
included.
Before we vote.
No,
No.
with and through Peter.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we have all their plating maps upstairs, so they can. check
Yeah.
on that for overlays.
so I think we're pretty free and
So
clear at
if
the
Peter
moment.
is okay with things, then we're not in conflict. Okay.
And if we have zoning stuff at the end of this, or we have zoning recommendations, then we need to sit down with Leslie, Andrew, Megan. Okay, that works. Public meetings, we'll put that on hold for now.
Yep,
Well,
yeah.
obviously,
So I guess the big next step after we have filed the notice to proceed is going to be beginning to plan that first public meeting and thinking about a time frame for that. And, you know, likely looking at spring. I think on our original calendar, we had said maybe in April. That might be ambitious. That definitely is ambitious, I think, looking at that it's early March. But thinking, I don't know, maybe like later April, May might be more reasonable. I don't know. Kristen, how quickly do they turn around the notice to proceed?
So it has to hit the environmental monitor, which comes out, I believe, every 2 weeks. So okay. that'll start the timeline, and then it's a 30-day comment period after that. So okay. I mean, the earliest we're looking at is probably April, May, early June.
Yep. Okay.
I personally foresee a lot of public meetings during the summer when all the boaters are here, the fishing guys are here. The summer residents are here, which is 90% of what this affects, not year-round populations. So I really think we're going to have several public meetings during the summer.
Yep.
Just to capture the people that are really going to be the ones most affected by this. Since most of the year-round population lives within a mile of the Stop and Shop.
Definitely. Okay. So, and we can do a combination. I think we had proposed initially of doing mostly in-person meetings, but then doing one online to capture people who perhaps aren't there that summer or elsewhere.
And daytime versus nighttime also.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys are working during the daytime if they're out on the water. And I just think we're going to have to reach a large group of people.
Well, what I'll say about that is there has been a contingent of people that have talked to me, and I'm trying to get them somewhat organized. Guys that do spend a lot of time out there and work out there, et cetera. So, which I think would be a great asset, a great source of information. So,
cool.
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna bypass the organized first public meeting because we gotta get a little bit more together here. Yep. Identify resources to review and people and interest groups to engage. Yeah, we've got that. So is there anything else you want to bring up?
No, I've got something on that.
Yeah.
Two things. I have a very active member of SHAB, Steve Anderson.
Oh, SHAB. Yeah, there's a group.
Did about, I would say, 6 to 8 or more months of research on green crabs and invasive species, and he's actually written a paper that he would like some format to be included in the harbor plan. So my first point is that that's great that somebody would take the time to go to that length. It's probably premature.
Who is this guy?
Steve Anderson. He's on SHAB.
Yeah.
But I have the final paper of it, and it's been through a couple drafts and been rewritten, etc. So, Emily, what I'd like to do is get it to you, just so I don't lose it in a electronic format. And then someday when we're sitting around the table and we're talking about this kind of thing, we can bring it back up and insert it where it belongs.
That's great. Anything like that that's out there.
And then my second thing about
I've got the hatchery down there.
Resources is are we planning, and this was also brought up at CHAB, and it's been a thorn in several people's side. Are we planning on the harbor master being part of the planning process?
I know
You
from
were.
our end, we had planned.
You were,
I think,
be involved.
wasn't the harbor master in the list of
yeah.
members of this committee?
No.
She's listed as a staff thing. We've kind of adopted it, not having actual town staff members being on the committee proper
Yeah, they've had problems with that before.
and being advisory, but the intention was to have their office involved in whatever capacity is needed.
Absolutely, because you.
Because we have a
you were-
lot of
You did.
people that are quite concerned that she needs to participate.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, we invite her.
Yeah.
Invite her for the next one.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But she's a sort of not a member at large, but a de facto.
Right.
I know when I was going through the matrix for the last harbor plan to update it, most of the questions from harbor operations and the oil spill and stuff were marked as complete, but I wasn't so sure that they were actually complete. And so I felt like she needed to kind of, we need to have a conversation to kind of see where that stuff is.
Well, while the oil spill plan, I will tell you that it was completed along with the CZM and the state and everything, but and I'm being as tactful as I can. It's a lot easier. It was easier when I was sitting at the table because I could give that information, but there is some hesitation on her part to attend meetings, as we've had issue with the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board. But if you invite her, and then it's up to her to either participate or not.
Yeah,
No, absolutely.
I think that's kind of critical. It's leave it up to her.
I think,
But we
you know,
need to hear from her one way or the other.
from our end, when we were sending the composition in for the select board and people involved, just to kind of run through a brief list is obviously from a town staff level. I think obviously we were kind of stuck with circling the wagons here and getting everything together through natural resources. But obviously some level of participation is going to be needed from not only the harbor master's office, obviously Andrew or Leslie or someone from planning is going to have to be involved at times for discussions that are there.
What about the hatchery?
She's here.
Oh, that's fine.
Hatchery folks are here. Some level, and I know they're a little bit in flux, but probably some level of participation from Public Works is probably going to be necessary at some point too. But I don't think you can have a harbor plan without the harbor master being involved just by name.
Yeah.
So
As tactful as
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Could I ask you a question?
Sure.
Going through the plan, the 2009 plan, there are a lot of things that we're going to do this, we're going to do that, this has been done, that has been done. But it seemed to me as I was reading through it that there ought to be a clean, now that we're constituted, go through it.
Yeah.
This could be a piece of work that we could be doing while we're getting organized on other fronts to go through it and where are we on these things, because I don't know when the last time that this document was updated. I think it would be a good piece of work for us to do. It might be able for us to use the time as we're getting organized and this other stuff to start that process.
Yeah, to just start at the
I can do
beginning.
it.
Just go through it and just sort of,
Yeah,
but I think it's more than just one person. I think it's a small group of this group. It doesn't need, I mean, 2 or 3 people at the most, so that there's
Well,
some.
the nice thing about the matrix that came out from the last one is that it's by interest.
Yeah.
For how it came together. I know recently UHI and our staff, we met with Sarah Octay, who was kind of the keeper of that matrix to figure out her coding system, which I don't know if Kim or Kristen want to agree is overly elaborate, maybe difficult. Like it was like numerical codes with letter codes, with color codes, with then color codes for the color codes, and just trying to like sift through it to get it to a more digestible form to do just what you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I think we were pretty close on where some of it was, and then also, where it was, so hopefully we'll have that, maybe we'll try to get that to everybody for the meeting on the 22nd as well, for where everyone has that in.
Before the 22nd, can you, the implementation plan, which was separate from the big document, as to what was actually done?
Yeah, that's what I was
You're trying to put them together.
Exactly. I'm trying to figure out,
What
I
did
think
get
there
done?
ought to be sort of like a
Simple.
present day audit as to where, so that we, don't spend time talking about stuff that was
already
actually done.
Yeah.
Or that we focus on the stuff that wasn't done and why wasn't it done?
That's a good project for Will.
No, it's not a good project for Will. But we, Tara and I have been working on that, and Kristen has been working, not Kristen, Kim and Kristen have been working on it as well,
Okay,
to take that. So we'll send everyone before that meeting on the 22nd,
okay.
our updated version, and then maybe we'll send the original version for everyone to see too, just because it's helpful. And then that will give us somewhere to go.
But I'm thinking that to get a few people from this committee, part of that, we'll just get more involvement. Does that make sense?
more focus on one
Exactly,
thing.
and more people involved in actually what we're doing or need to do.
Yeah, let's see what he gives us on the
Okay, we'll see,
22nd, and then
we'll decide.
then we'll figure out if we
And we'll
need
decide
that.
what needs, where we go
Yeah.
from there. Yeah.
Well, we'll get it
That's
to you
probably a
in
really good
advance,
idea.
just so you guys have time to prepare before
Yeah.
the meeting.
Now, does everybody need a hard copy?
Yeah, we can happily get these little hard copies.
We can give you hard copies. I just can't read
not
something
a-
like this on my computer. I just can't do it.
Not an inexpensive
Yeah.
proposition.
Like a town case. So if we need it,
Linda, may I say something too? This is Jack Wigan. Can you hear me?
oh yeah,
If you look at the appendix 1 of the 2009 plan, you'll see that that contains an assessment of whether the 1993 recommendation, what the status of those recommendations were. And we kind of built that into the table of recommendations from the 2009 plan.
okay.
So you can
I think
see how we did it. We sort of status report on how the 93 recommendations went.
I think what Jeff has in mind is something a lot simpler.
Well, it's pretty simple. It's not the implementation matrix
That's
that
what I'm
Sarah
looking
worked on.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for, to be simplified.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, I'm on the Roads and Right of Way Committee. There were a lot of things in here that the Roads and Right of Way Committee was gonna do. And I got one of these things at the
Yeah.
last meeting.
Yeah,
It's like, what? So I just throw that out. If there's a question about roads and right of way, I guess you could come to me on that. And I can act as the funnel with the other people.
good. You're on there with Nat?
You're sending
idea.
like a red line version?
I'm on there with a lot of people.
It's
Yes,
not
you are.
a red line version. It's kind of an updated and reconfigured, because the original version, I know when we even just sat down with it,
It's complicated.
he
Give me
just
a
can't
headache.
understand it.
Yeah,
So it's like a
You just
decoding
need a
of
yes.
the.
Yes.
Yes,
it's
or no.
It's
simplifying
like a
the whole
decoding and
thing.
update.
Yeah.
Like green, orange, red.
No.
Like green, it was done, orange, it's in the works, red, it didn't get
Well, that's the
done.
problem
And
is,
start from there, like, oh.
It's-
Yeah,
color.
Yes, sir.
She ran amok with that
Oh,
though.
we need to work. on it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
gotta
the
be
original, I mean,
simplified.
Dave probably remembers the original Matrix is like,
It's complicated.
it's, you need like a degree to just deal with it.
You don't need that. We need to be a little bit more
Oh, I'm
focused.
gonna make the stuff that I was supposed to do. I did.
So if you want a hard copy, Jesse needs a hard copy.
I would take one.
Yeah,
Okay.
Emily needs a hard copy, so you might as well bring some hard copies and leave them with Ann at the front desk if you want to pick them up or something.
Someone can grab a hard copy for me and hold on to it till I get back on the island. I'm back like the 3rd week of April.
Yeah, well, we'll print out a few hard copies. I know we have people downtown, if we can drop some off the
I
way.
could also print out a hard copy.
Yeah.
We should, yeah,
Oh,
a copier and
So-
printer.
you know, it's double-sided, right?
Yeah, I can double side too.
They have the same copy machine that,
But you didn't give me one with holes in it.
you didn't ask for holes in it.
I want holes in it.
Well, get 3 whole bunch.
Take it over to Nantucket Office Products. They'll just go get Shinga on it. Okay, anything else, guys?
So next 2 weeks, we're
Yep.
meeting again.
On Wednesday, the 22nd.
22nd, 2 PM. I'll send out the location to everybody. We have some materials to send them today.
All right, somebody needs to make a motion to adjourn.
So
Give it to Phil and Dave seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
No,
Aye.
you got a roll call.
Okay.
Phil,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Samantha,
Aye.
Jesse,
Aye.
Emily,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and did we lose Seth?
No,
Is that
I'm
there?
here. Aye.
You, I, and Chairman's aye. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Enjoy your trip.
We have a leader too.
Yes, and a vice leader.
Well.